This is the human side of the story. And, we're going to tap into your history and the angst of the GM world leading up to the trade deadline. And back in the day, the deadline was 26 days prior to the end of the regular season. Now it's closer to 6 weeks. But did the days of the deadline approaching have the same feel 3 decades ago as it does today? Because now it's almost a national holiday in Canada. Sportsnet, TSN have shows, ESPN has a show. We're going to have a show. But is the feel the same as it once was?
I don't think so. And the reason, there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is that it's just so much harder to make a trade than it was back then. Remember, there was no cap back then, so your budget was either unlimited or extremely limited, because you had the haves and have-nots. As I said, it just was it's much harder today to make a trade. The contracts are extremely long. When you look around, we were just talking earlier about Seth Jones. He's already gone through 4 years of his contract and he's got more to go with Florida. So that's why these things are so much harder today to make a trade. I think there's less options for GMs today than there was in my day. And there's 32 teams, which gives you, I guess one could say, more options, more players out there, but it's really restricted on what you can do today than it was in my time.
We all know it's a business. You hear it constantly that every time there's a deal made, it's not personal, it's a business. But to a degree, it is personal because you know that anytime a player is going to be dealt or you're receiving a player, that there's a level of personal upheaval, moving families or not moving them, keeping them in their schools. There's the whole bit with that. Was there a challenge for you in terms of being able to detach yourself from what the emotional piece would be for the players that were being traded?
Yeah, you learn to do that after a while. At first, I remember the first trade I ever made, and I was up all night long the night before worrying about how the player would think about me and, how is this going to affect him? And the next day when I called him and I did it, it was just like, oh, okay. Okay, I got to go. And
married or single?
No, I think he was married. Okay. He was married. I'm groping in my mind for the name, but doesn't really matter. I mean, it is part of the business and it is what you signed up for. So it goes along with everything else that's in the NHL. You can be fired at any time if you're a coach, if you're GM, if you're that. You can be traded at any time. This was the way it was before the no move clauses. You could be sent down at any time. There was always a lot of things up in the air. You're not a CPA working in an office. You are in a very fluid business where at any time your circumstances could change. So, as the guy that has to make those moves, you do detach yourself from it. You can't think and worry about, oh, he's got 3 kids and they're in school and this and that. You do think about that. I do anyway. When you fire somebody, you really do. That really does bother you that you're really putting the family into upheaval because firing is different than trading.
When it's all said and done, there's got to be some sort of emotion from a general manager, but is it relief? Is it satisfaction? Is it regret? I mean, I'm sure you've probably experienced all of those at various deadlines during the course of your career.
Yeah, when you make a trade at the deadline, you're when you're selling, and I only did that I think once. You're concerned that you're waving the white flag on the season to your fans, and that doesn't feel good at all. I mean, not at all, because you brag about the young guys you got and how good they're going to be and what the future's like and all that. but it just doesn't feel good to know that you're going to have to go through another month of knowing you're not going to make the playoffs before you can hide for the summer. When you're trading for somebody to get you further into the playoffs, all you're doing is you're sitting and you're hoping. And from the first time they don your uniform and go out there, you're watching them carefully to see, is this going to be the missing piece? Is the piece that's going to, propel us, not necessarily to the cup, but propel us to having a good playoff run. And so you are nervous after that as well.
Aside from 94, which we've documented considerably over time, was there any deadline that stood out to you as particularly memorable?
Well, yeah, the one that I think about a lot, he ended up on the Stanley Cup team, was Joey Kocur. Getting Joey Kocur for Kevin Miller. And we also got a player whose son ended up playing for the Capitals for a while, Per Juice.
Yes.
Remember Per Juice?
I do remember Per Juice.
And he actually was really good for us the next season, which I believe we got Joey in 91 from Detroit for Kevin Miller. And then, we had a heck of a run there, and Joey ended up on the Stanley Cup team in 94. So, and was a big part of the reason why we were able to be a lot tougher team than we had been previously. So that deadline deal stands out to me for whatever reason, maybe because I was there when Joey was drafted by Detroit. I was part of that. And then bringing him from Detroit, it feels funny. I knew him when the day we drafted him. And then, I end up trading for him with New York. So it's that one was memorable. Yeah.
Come Friday of this week, the teams will now know who they will go to war with for the rest of the season.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.